At the Armidale police station. The atmosphere that afternoon seemed ordinary. A few officers sat behind desks, busy with piles of reports. The wall clock ticked slowly, emphasizing the room's quiet. The crisp air from the New England tablelands still felt cool. A gentle breeze occasionally slipped through the open window. But that calm shattered when the front door burst open. An elderly couple walked in, their faces panicked. The husband, Rob Reed, his body thin but still upright, looked breathless. His hands trembled as if seeking support to keep from collapsing. Beside him, his wife, Meryl, was sobbing. Her steps faltered, as if she might fall at any moment. The desk sergeant immediately stood up to greet them, then gestured for them to sit. At the same time, an officer in a neat suit crossed the hallway. This was Detective Senior Sergeant Jack Preston, the lead investigator for the Armidale CIU. He had just returned from a meeting at the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP, office. His eyes were sharp, accustomed to reading people. A single glance at the elderly couple's panicked faces made his gut twist. This wasn't a standard missing persons report. He quickly stepped forward, opening the door to a small interview room, and said in a firm but calming tone, "Please, Mr. and Mrs. Reed, sit down. Take a slow breath. Tell me from the beginning what happened." Those words just made Meryl's sobs break even harder. She covered her face with a crumpled tissue. Her shoulders shook violently. Her sobs filled the room, making the atmosphere feel suffocating. Rob, though trying to hold himself together, couldn't hide his inner turmoil. With a trembling voice, he said, "Detective, please, you have to save our grandson. Liam Scott. He's been gone for 3 days. We are sure his stepmother, Laura Wallace, has hurt him." The room fell silent. The sentence landed like a thunderclap. Jack's eyes narrowed. He looked down for a moment, piecing the information together. He'd handled plenty of teen runaways. Many turned out to be over minor issues. But this was different. Rob's voice was filled with both anguish and conviction. Meryl's inability to do anything but weep added weight to the accusation. Jack motioned to a junior constable to note every word. He then looked straight at Rob. "Please tell me clearly. Since when has Liam been missing? And why are you so certain his stepmother is involved?" Rob took a long breath and began the story. His tears mingled with a low voice full of anger. 3 days ago, Liam didn't show up to school. His homeroom teacher, Ms. Anna Price, was the first to let us know. When we tried calling his mobile, it was off. When we called Laura, her answer just. It cut us to the bone. She said Liam was just sulking because she wouldn't buy him a new phone, then did a runner somewhere. No way. We raised him since he was little. We know his character. Liam's not like that. He's polite, studies hard, respects his elders. Rob's voice rose. His fists clenched on the table. Jack listened intently. Every word strengthened his hunch that this wasn't just a teen running away. There was something darker hiding behind Laura Wallace's sweet smile. The woman who now held control over the entire estate of her late husband, Angus Norton. Outside, rain suddenly began to pour, drumming loudly on the corrugated tin roof. The sound felt ironic. Nature was washing the earth clean. While on the other side, perhaps a great sin was being hidden by the shine of money and power. Jack looked at the faces of the two elderly people before him. The lines on their faces weren't just from age, but from deep, internal wounds. He took a deep breath and said solidly, "All right, Mr. and Mrs. Reed. We will action this report immediately. I promise I will find Liam and uncover the truth behind all this. Those words made Rob break down. Meryl gripped her husband's hand tightly. They knew, from that second, the story of their missing grandson was no longer just a family matter. This had become a major case that could shake Armidale, maybe even the whole New England region. Heavy rain lashed Armidale that night. The sound of it hitting the roof mixed with the scent of wet earth, penetrating the interview room. The dim fluorescent light left long shadows on the walls. There, DSS Jack Preston sat opposite the elderly couple. Meryl's tears still flowed. Rob fought hard to control himself. His voice trembled, but was full of conviction, as he reiterated that Liam wasn't a reckless teenager. The kid wouldn't just run off over a phone. He's diligent, polite, and deeply respected us. There's something darker behind all this. Jack listened with full attention. He'd handled many missing child reports. Most ended with the kid found at a mate's house or the local shopping center. However, this time was different. The tone in the old couple's voices resonated with him. They weren't just guessing. Jack then asked who else lived in the house with Liam. Rob answered softly, just him and his stepmother, Laura Wallace. Ever since his father, Angus Norton, passed away last year, that big house. It's been like a prison for our grandson. The name Laura Wallace was mentioned again. Jack underlined it heavily in his notebook. He knew the Norton family story was well known in the Armidale district. Angus had been a successful grazier with a large property. After his first wife died, he remarried Laura, a woman known for being as beautiful as she was ambitious. Not long after the wedding, Angus's health declined sharply until he died suddenly. Since then, Laura became the sole executor of the entire family estate. Liam was only listed as the beneficiary on paper. This pattern wasn't unfamiliar to Jack. He'd read similar case files. When a large inheritance is at stake, family conflict can turn into tragedy. But as an investigator, Jack knew he couldn't rely on hunches. He needed concrete proof. He turned to Meryl, who was still sobbing, and said gently, "Please try to stay calm. We will conduct a thorough investigation. Please help us with every bit of information, no matter how small, because sometimes the trivial things are the key." Meryl nodded slowly. She remembered that in recent months, Liam had often complained about his stepmother's attitude. Laura never yelled or hit him, but she constantly restricted his freedom. His allowance was controlled, every activity had to be reported. Even Liam's plan to study overseas was fiercely opposed. He felt he wasn't living in his own home anymore. "Like a stranger in his own house," Meryl said in a whisper. That statement strengthened Jack's suspicion that there was serious tension in the family. He formed a strategy in his head. First, dig deeper into Liam's life at school and with his friends. Second, quietly monitor Laura, as her overly calm demeanor was suspicious. Third, secure all of Liam's digital data to trace his last steps. The night grew late, but for Jack, this case had only just begun. He knew the road to the truth would be long and winding. The next morning, the Armidale sky was still gloomy. The remnants of last night's rain left the streets wet and the air damp. The police car moved slowly through the town's streets towards New England Regional High, where Liam Scott was a student. In the front seat, DSS Jack Preston reviewed his brief notes on the case. Age 16, 3 days missing. Sole heir to the late Angus Norton's estate. Several team members sat in the back, their faces tense. Jack gave a brief directive before they arrived. "We are just doing interviews. No search warrant yet. Watch her attitude. Note every detail. Don't trust easily." Everyone nodded in understanding. Upon arriving at the school, the atmosphere was bustling. Students joking on the oval seemed to contrast with the empty chair in the Year 10 science classroom. That chair belonged to Liam. And for 3 days, no one had sat in it. The principal greeted them with a worried face, then led Jack to the staff room. "Liam's a good kid," he said quietly. "Good average, polite, never caused any trouble. We find it hard to believe he'd just run off." Jack nodded, then asked to meet the homeroom teacher, Ms. Anna Price. The woman, in her 40s, entered with a somber face. She was known to be close to Liam. In a low tone, she explained that since his father died, Liam had been quiet for a while. But in the last 2 months, he actually seemed energized. He often talked about university and his future. "In my opinion, it's impossible he would just leave like that." That answer made Jack even more certain. He then asked to speak to Liam's closest friends. Several students were called to the counseling office to speak more openly. The first to enter was Ben Aiken, his desk mate and closest friend. His face was pale, but he tried to stay calm. "Sir, I don't believe Liam ran away," he said firmly. "Yeah, he was often annoyed with Mrs. Wallace, but he had big dreams. He once said, 'Just wait till I'm 18, then I can decide my own life.'" Jack asked again, "Did you speak to him the day before he disappeared?" "Yeah, that afternoon," Ben replied. He'd had an argument with Mrs. Wallace about his uni plans. He was really down about it, but he was still joking around with me. No way he'd just vanish without a trace the next day. This information strengthened the belief that Liam hadn't left voluntarily. Jack noted it carefully, then asked if he did leave, what would he definitely take? "His laptop and his graphic novel collection," Ben answered quickly. "He always has them. But I heard they are all still in his room. That's what makes me sure he didn't leave on his own." That simple statement felt sharper than 1,000 pieces of evidence. After Ben, several other friends were called. The majority gave similar answers. Liam was a good kid, loved his grandparents, had clear goals. No one believed he would leave everything behind. But when it was the turn of a female student named Chloe, Liam's cousin, the mood changed. Chloe seemed hesitant. She looked down for a long time before finally pulling a small object from her pocket. A USB stick. "Sir, this is Liam's. He gave it to me last week. He said if anything happened to him, please keep it safe." The room went silent. Jack accepted the USB stick, his gut churning. He knew a kid Liam's age rarely left something like that, unless they felt unsafe. Chloe continued softly. "The night before he disappeared, Liam sent me a quick text. It said, 'Don't be scared if anything weird happens at the house. Please look after Nan and Pop.'" Those words hit Jack hard. A 16-year-old boy feeling he had to protect his grandparents from something threatening in his own home. After the interviews, Jack walked out of the classroom, standing for a moment in front of Liam's empty desk. The silence amidst the laughter of other students made his heart feel heavier. On the drive back, he stared out at the green paddocks lining the road. But his mind was fixed on one thing. Liam never intended to run. His last message proved he felt a real threat. That afternoon at the temporary command post at Armidale station, the cybercrime unit was brought in. A kid Liam's age lives on their phone and social media. If he really ran, there'd be a trail, Jack said. If not, it means the trail was cut off. A few hours later, the initial results came in. According to provider data, Liam's last call was at 3 p.m. A brief call to Ben. After that, no activity. The last signal location at 10 p.m. was still detected from the tower covering his property. After that, the phone went dead. The room fell silent again. That fact meant Liam disappeared in or around his own home. "Sir, there's a short note in his Notes app, auto-saved to the cloud," reported Constable Davies from the cybercrime team. The sentence was short, but made everyone freeze. "I feel trapped. If something happens to me, please find the answers in this house." Jack looked down for a long time. Those simple words were like a final cry from a child. He clenched his fist. "Liam, we've heard your message. We are going back to that house, and this time we are not coming back empty-handed." The next afternoon, the Armidale sky was still grey. Drizzle had been falling since noon, leaving puddles on the country road leading towards the Uralla district. The police car moved slowly past wet paddocks and scattered farmhouses. In the distance, a prominent building stood on a ridge, the large Norton homestead. Its white walls contrasted with the dark red roof. High fences surrounded the vast, manicured garden. From behind the house, the faint sound of sheep could be heard from the large shearing sheds. The car had just stopped in the driveway when a woman appeared on the veranda. It was Laura Wallace. A dark blue dress fit her perfectly. Her makeup was light, her hair carefully styled. A friendly smile was painted on her lips. A smile that was too sweet for the situation of a mother whose stepson had been missing for 3 days. "Good afternoon, officers," Laura greeted them softly. "Please come in. I know my late husband's parents must be worried. But believe me, Liam is just sulking. He'll come home." Jack replied with a brief nod. He sensed something behind that friendliness. A smile that felt more like a performance than sincerity. The living room was luxurious. Leather sofas were neatly arranged. A large painting hung on the wall. Fresh flower arrangements filled the corners. But the atmosphere was cold, like a showroom. Not a place where a family gathered. Jack chose to sit directly opposite Laura. With a calm voice, he began. "Mrs. Wallace, we received a report that Liam has missed 3 days of school. Can you tell us what you know?" Laura sighed deeply, putting on a concerned face. "We had a disagreement. He wanted something I felt was unnecessary, then he got angry and left with a bag. I assumed he was staying at a friend's place. You know what teenagers are like." Jack looked her straight in the eye, then asked what he took when he left. Laura motioned to a housekeeper, who immediately brought a black backpack. "This is what he packed. Some clothes and toiletries. That's why I'm sure he left intentionally." Jack opened the bag. Sure enough, there were a few folded clothes and toiletries, but his mind immediately snagged. Liam's laptop wasn't in it. His beloved graphic novel collection was also missing. The very things closest to a teenager were left behind. "Have you tried contacting his friends?" Jack asked. Laura smiled awkwardly. "I don't really know who his friends are. Liam rarely shared much. It was hard to imagine a mother, even a stepmother, knowing nothing about the social circle of a child living in her house. That total ignorance just highlighted a massive disconnect." While the conversation continued, 2 team members asked permission to see Liam's room. The room was tidy, the bed made, the desk covered in books. The laptop was still on the desk, charger plugged in. The row of graphic novels was neatly arranged on the shelf. On a small table, there was a photo frame of Liam with his late mother. A constable whispered to Jack, "If a kid runs, they usually take their laptop or favorite things. All of this is still here." Jack nodded slightly. These small pieces were strengthening the suspicion that Laura's story didn't match the reality. After nearly an hour, Jack concluded the interview. He stood, looking at Laura with a flat expression. Thank you, We will continue to investigate. For now, please remain at home so we can contact you easily. Laura smiled sweetly, as if relieved. Of course, Detective. I'm not going anywhere. I hope Liam comes back soon. But as Jack and his team walked out, he could feel Laura's gaze following them. There was something in that look. Not the concern of a mother, but the cunning confidence of someone who had prepared an answer for every question. In the driveway, Jack paused. The team waited for instructions. In a low voice, he said, "Start surveillance tonight. Keep it quiet, around this property." 2 officers, rotating shifts. 24 hours. I want to know every movement. One of the constables asked hesitantly, "Sir, she seems awfully calm. Is it possible she's right, and he's just gone for a bit?" Jack stared back at the large house on the ridge. From a distance, the white building looked elegant, but cold. No parent is that calm when their kid is missing for 3 days, he said quietly. Calm like that isn't acceptance. It's a sign that something is being hidden. The police car then moved down the gravel road. In the rearview mirror, Jack saw Laura still standing on the veranda, waving with a faint smile. A smile plastered on her face, as if certain her plan was working perfectly. Jack sighed. He realized the game had just begun. The opponent he was facing was not an ordinary person, but a woman who was hiding a dark secret behind her friendly demeanor. Night once again covered the district. In the distance, the large Norton homestead stood arrogantly on the ridge, lit by dim garden lights. The first night of surveillance on the Norton property was quiet. 2 officers sat on old motorbikes not far from the gate, disguised as locals hanging out on the roadside. From that post, they could observe anyone coming or going. Their first report was simple. Laura followed her usual routine. In the morning, she shopped in town. In the afternoon, she met with stock suppliers. In the evening, she watered the garden. At night, the house lights went out at 10 p.m. sharp. No sign of panic, no effort to find the boy. Everything was too flat. When Jack read the report the next morning, he frowned. If Liam really ran away, a mother would be frantically searching, calling everyone, visiting friends' houses. She wouldn't be this calm. This kind of calm is dangerous, he muttered. The next day, Jack decided to go himself. He wore an old jacket and a simple cap, then walked the trails around the perimeter of the large property. From behind a cluster of gum trees, he could see Laura standing in the yard by the shearing sheds, giving instructions to the workers. Her movements were confident, her face serene. She looked more like a busy businesswoman than a mother who had lost her son. Jack's hunch grew stronger. Someone hiding a big secret often looks too calm. He walked around to the back of the sheds. The stock pens ran in long lines, the smell of lanolin and manure hung in the air. But his steps halted when he saw a small building at the end of the lot. A cement-walled shed with an iron door, looking much sturdier than the sheds around it. From a narrow vent, a sharp smell, almost like chemicals, drifted out. Jack approached, greeting an old station hand who was drawing water. "G'day. What's that shed used for?" The worker looked up quickly, then answered softly. "That's where the industrial feed grinder is. Usually only runs during the day. Always locked at night. But lately, there's been a strange smell coming from it." That brief answer made Jack's heart pound. He thanked the man and left quickly, not wanting to arouse suspicion. But in his mind, he marked that shed as the most suspicious point. That night, at the command post, Jack drew a small map on the whiteboard. He wrote 2 big words, "Back shed." This is where Laura's secret is likely hidden. We don't have the legal grounds to search yet, so be patient. But starting tonight, focus all surveillance on that shed. The following days, the surveillance tightened. The reports coming in made Jack's brow furrow. Almost every night, Laura went to the backyard. She carried a bucket of water and a bottle of cleaning fluid, then hosed down the floor around the shed. After that, she'd unlock it, go inside for a moment, turn on the light, then come back out, her face calm. One of the officers whispered over the radio, "Sir, this is weird. If it's just a feed shed, why is she so diligently cleaning it at night?" Jack answered firmly. "Log every detail. Don't approach. We need the right moment." On the third night, Jack's suspicion found new footing. It was almost 11 p.m. when his radio crackled. "Sir, the shed light is on." The surveillance officer's voice sounded tense. From a distance, they could see Laura's shadow entering the shed alone. She was wearing a dark rain slicker. Even though it wasn't raining. The iron door was pulled shut. A moment later, the faint sound of a motor was heard, followed by flashes of light from the ventilation slit. Half an hour passed. The light went out. Laura emerged with calm steps. Her face remained expressionless. As if everything that just happened was a normal routine. The detailed report landed on Jack's desk before dawn. He read every note, his heart pounding. That shed. What is she really doing in there at this hour? Jack leaned back, staring at the ceiling. All the signs were pointing to one thing. Liam never left the house voluntarily. And that shed behind the property wasn't just for a feed grinder. He was sure that's where the secret Laura was desperately trying to cover up was hidden. The next morning, the atmosphere at Liam's school was the same. His chair remained empty. His friends' faces were grim. Ben, his best friend, came to the station with new information. He showed Jack the last text message from Liam. "Wish me luck. If anything happens tomorrow, please tell my Nan and Pop. I love them." Jack read the sentence twice. Simple words, but they felt like a farewell. It matched the digital report showing Liam's last signal was near the house. Jack whispered to himself, "Liam. We are getting closer. No secret can be buried forever." That night, surveillance resumed. Two officers disguised as young locals hanging out at a pub near the road to the property. From there, they could see a faint light in the backyard. The report came over the radio, "Sir, target has entered the shed again. Staying longer this time." Jack clenched his fist. Every move Laura made added to his certainty that the door to the truth was behind the grimy walls of that shed. On the fifth day since Liam disappeared, the atmosphere at the Armidale station felt even more tense. Reports from the cybercrime unit, teachers, and Liam's friends were forming a clear picture. Every witness agreed, Liam wasn't the type of teenager to run away without reason. His grades were good, his relationships with friends were solid, and he had big dreams of studying overseas. Davies, from the cybercrime team, presented new data. "Sir, Liam's last call was at 3 p.m. A brief call to Ben. After that, no more activity. His phone signal was still detected until 10 p.m., within a 500 m radius of his house, then it went dead." Jack listened with a creased forehead. This fact confirmed that Liam never actually left the house. He disappeared in his own vicinity. It didn't stop there. Davies added a shock. "We found a short note in his Notes app, auto-saved to the cloud before his phone died." Jack immediately read the text on the screen. "I feel trapped. If something happens to me, please find the answers in this house." The room suddenly went quiet. Those words were like Liam's last voice, leaving a clue so he wouldn't just vanish. Jack closed his eyes for a moment, then said quietly, "Liam, we've heard your message. We will return to that house, and this time, not empty-handed." Meanwhile, the surveillance team watching the Norton homestead sent a different report. Ben, one of the officers, reported via radio, "Sir. Target is leaving in her personal car, not going to the shops. We are following." Laura's car stopped at a modern cafe in the center of Armidale. From a distance, she was seen sitting in a corner with a man in a neat suit. Ben managed to take a picture from a safe distance. That night, the photo reached Jack. When enlarged, the man's face was clear. Jack recognized him. His name was Mr. Harrison, a well-known solicitor in Armidale who often handled wills and estates. The meeting lasted almost 2 hours. Laura looked serious, talking intently. Occasionally, she took notes while Harrison explained at length. As they parted, Laura slipped a thin folder into her bag. The full report was compiled at the station that night. Jack stood in front of the large whiteboard. He pinned up the photo of Laura and Harrison, connecting them with a red line. Her stepson is missing, but she's meeting with an estate's lawyer. What is she preparing for? Jack said in a heavy tone. Davies added, if Liam's status can be legally declared as missing, or presumed deceased, the inheritance path opens up. This meeting clearly has nothing to do with finding a missing kid. Jack nodded slowly. But he knew this was all just suspicion. Without physical evidence, the court couldn't touch Laura. Over the next few days, more reports came in. At night, Laura was seen hosing down the floor around the small shed with water and cleaning fluid. She always brought the key, went inside briefly, then came out again. All her movements were recorded in detail. Neighbors also started talking. Mrs. Rose, who ran the local general store near the property entrance, told an undercover officer, "It's strange, isn't it? Her stepson's missing, but Mrs. Wallace never asks the locals. Just says he's away visiting. Gives me the shivers, to be honest." That small comment further solidified the picture Jack was building. Laura was trying to look normal, but it was that very calmness that was suspicious. On the 7th night since Liam went missing, the team gathered again at the station. On the whiteboard, Laura's photo was connected to Harrison's name and a big question mark over the words "back shed." "The facts are clear," Jack summarized. Liam was last seen entering the house at 9 p.m. His phone signal disappeared an hour later, still on the property. After that, no trace. Meanwhile, Laura is busy meeting lawyers and secretly entering the shed at night. It's all connected. The team members looked serious. But Jack reminded them, to move to the next stage, we need a break. Either an eyewitness, or a new discovery. Until that comes, nobody lets up. Outside, the drizzle returned, wetting the country roads. From the station window, Jack looked into the darkness towards the Norton homestead. He knew time was not on their side. Laura was no ordinary woman. If she was hiding a dark secret, every passing day just made the trail harder to find. He whispered to himself, "Liam, hang on. We'll wait. And when the time comes, no door can hide the truth." On the morning of the 8th day since Liam disappeared, the atmosphere at Armidale station felt different. A middle-aged man in worn clothes sat nervously in the waiting room. He clutched an old hat. His eyes were downcast, as if hesitant to speak. Jack, just coming out of a briefing, immediately noticed him. "Who's this?" he asked the desk sergeant. "Name's Kev Shaw, sir. Used to be a station hand at the Norton property. Says he needs to speak to you directly," the sergeant replied. Jack nodded quickly. "Please come in, Mr. Shaw." Sit down, make yourself comfortable. What's brought you here? Kev took a deep breath, then his hoarse voice broke. I can't stay quiet, detective. The night Liam disappeared, I saw something. I was too scared to talk. But my conscience is eating me up. I'm afraid the secret will get buried. Jack leaned forward. His eyes were serious. Just tell me what you saw. We will protect you. Kev looked down, then began his story. That night, I went back to the back paddock around 11 p.m. looking for a tool I'd left behind. When I passed near the shed, I was surprised the light was still on. It's usually locked up tight by dusk. What did you see? Jack asked quietly. I hid behind the trees. Through a gap in the window, I saw Mrs. Wallace clear as day. She was wearing one of those plastic rain slickers. Had gloves on. And what really spooked me, I heard the feed grinder roaring in the dead of night. She was pouring water and scrubbing the inside of the machine. Her face was tense. Detective, it gave me the creeps. Jack stared at him intently. You're sure it was Mrs. Wallace? I'd know her anywhere. Worked there for years. No mistake. It was definitely her in the shed that night. I got scared and left quick, Kev said softly. The room suddenly fell silent. This new piece fit perfectly into the large puzzle Jack and the team had been building for a week. Why are you only reporting this now? Jack asked carefully. Kev sighed. I was scared, detective. Mrs. Wallace is a hard woman. If I said anything, I'd lose my job. But a few days ago, she suddenly called me in. Said I was getting old and slow, and then sacked me on the spot with a month's pay. It felt like she wanted to get rid of me so I wouldn't open my mouth. Jack stood, walked briefly, then stared at the large whiteboard. It already had Laura's photo, Harrison the lawyer, and the words back shed. Now he added a new note in red marker, witness Kev Shaw. He turned to his team. This is what we've been waiting for. Direct testimony that corroborates all our suspicions. The night Liam disappeared, Laura was in the shed, running a heavy machine, cleaning something. And the next day, she rushes to fire the only person who saw her. Davies from cybercrime chimed in. With this testimony, we have strong grounds to apply for a search warrant. Jack nodded firmly. Correct. We can't delay any longer. We have to find out what's really hidden in that shed. He then looked at Kev. Thank you for your courage, Mr. Shaw. Don't worry. We'll ensure your safety. Your voice is vital for the truth. Kev looked down, his eyes glistening. Liam was a good kid, sir. Used to say good day to me every morning. I can't stand the thought of his trace just disappearing. Jack patted his shoulder. Trust me. The truth will come out. That afternoon, Jack compiled the complete brief. He pieced everything together. Digital data, witness statements from teachers and friends, Laura's cold behavior, her meeting with the lawyer, the suspicious activity at the shed, and now, the former employee's testimony. When the brief was finished, he looked at the clock. The sky outside was turning red, a light drizzle returning. Jack closed the thick folder with conviction. Tomorrow, we file for the warrant. When that shed door opens, all the secrets will be exposed. The team nodded in unison. They knew a major step was about to be taken. That night, Jack looked again at Liam's short note on his laptop screen. He didn't read it aloud, just felt its meaning. It's okay, son, he whispered. We're close. Your secret will be answered soon. That morning, the Armidale air still held the scent of wet earth after the night's rain. In his office, DSS Jack Preston sat with a firm expression. In front of him lay a thick folder containing the hard work of his team for over a week. Witness statements, digital data, the timeline of Liam's disappearance, and Kev Shaw's testimony were the final pieces of the long puzzle. Jack closed the folder slowly, then looked at his team with a steady voice. We move today. No more delays. The brief is strong enough. We are getting the warrant. Near midday, he walked into the Armidale courthouse to see a magistrate. The room was cool and quiet. Only the ticking of a clock was audible. A senior magistrate accepted the folder from Jack. Page by page was turned. His eyebrows furrowed occasionally. He paused for a long time on Kev Shaw's testimony about the back shed. Then he closed the file and looked at Jack. After a short pause, he nodded. The argument is clear, the evidence is strong. On behalf of the state, the warrant is issued. A signature was pressed. A wet ink stamp hit the paper. Jack received the document, his hand trembling slightly. He knew this wasn't just a legal document. This was the key that would unlock the door to the truth. By afternoon, the station yard was filled with the rumble of vehicles. CIU members prepared in tactical vests. Meanwhile, the forensics team prepared cases filled with special equipment. Jack stood before them. His voice was loud and clear. We are searching Laura Wallace's property tonight. Remember, our job isn't just to find evidence, but an answer for a missing boy. Be meticulous. One small detail could be the key. The officers replied in unison, yes, sir. The convoy set off as dusk approached. The usually quiet country road rumbled with engine noise. Residents peered from windows, wondering what was happening. The Norton homestead looked grand, but cold when the convoy pulled into the driveway. Laura stood on the veranda, still wearing a simple house dress. Her face showed shock at seeing dozens of police officers, but she quickly forced a faint smile. Jack stepped forward, showing the official warrant. Mrs. Laura Wallace, this is a search warrant. We will be examining the entire house and all buildings on this property. Laura's face went pale, though she tried to remain calm. Please, detective. My house is open. I have nothing to hide. Her words sounded polite, but Jack read something more. There was anxiety hidden behind that thin smile. The search began in the living room, then continued to the bedrooms, kitchen, and storage areas. Everything looked tidy. Almost too tidy. The team took notes and photos but found nothing significant. Until finally, they reached the backyard. In the corner of the property stood the shed with its faded paint and large, locked iron door. Jack turned to Laura. Please unlock this shed. The woman hesitated for a moment before handing over a key from her pocket. It's just the feed shed. Nothing special, she said, her voice noticeably softer than before. As the iron door creaked open, damp air mixed with a sharp smell immediately rushed out. The floor looked wet, as if it had just been hosed down. The forensics team moved in quickly. They put on gloves, masks, and then switched on UV lights. The purple light swept the walls and floor. Slowly, faint stains appeared, thin lines, splatters in the corner of the wall, even on the ceiling near the large grinder that stood prominently in the middle of the room. Sir, we have fluorescence in several spots. Suspected biological fluid, one of the techs reported. Jack moved closer, staring intently. Take samples. Document it clearly. The grinder looked too clean for a machine supposedly used regularly. The team carefully dismantled its inner parts. From a small, hard-to-reach crevice, they found a dark, sticky stain. A sterile swab was wiped across it, then placed in an evidence tube. Not stopping there, 2 other officers opened the drain trap behind the machine. A foul, pungent smell immediately hit them. From the iron grate of the drain, they found several strands of dark hair, trapped. That discovery made the room fall silent. Everyone knew that small item could be the major key. Jack took a deep breath and spoke firmly. "That's enough. The evidence is clear. Seal this shed." Laura stood in the doorway. Her face was now completely white. Her hands clutched a small bag. Her body was trembling visibly. She tried to speak. "It's just rotten feed, detective. Don't misinterpret." Jack looked at her for a long time, then said flatly, "You can provide your explanations at the station. Tonight, you're coming with us." 2 female officers stepped forward, escorting Laura with a firm but polite demeanor. She walked unsteadily, without resistance. As if the entire mask of calm she had worn was shattered the moment that shed door opened. Outside the gate, locals had gathered, whispering anxiously. They watched Laura being put into a police car. Some shook their heads slowly, others whispered. Finally, the secret is out. Jack stood in the drizzle, looking at the large house now cordoned off with yellow police tape. He knew this search was just the beginning. The evidence was collected, but the full answer about what really happened to Liam was still waiting to be revealed. That night, the interrogation room at Armidale police station felt cold and silent. The white light overhead illuminated the long, wooden table separating the investigator from Laura Wallace. She sat calmly, wearing simple grey clothing given to her by the officers. Though her face was pale, her gaze was still sharp, as if challenging anyone who tried to uncover her secret. Opposite her, DSS Jack Preston opened the thick folder of photos and notes. 2 other detectives sat beside him, ready to record every word. Jack began in a low, firm voice, "Mrs. Wallace, we have examined the back shed of your property. We found many inconsistencies. A wet floor, walls with faint stains, a drain trap containing hair. What would you like to explain?" Laura straightened her back. Her voice was soft, almost like a teacher advising a student. "I clean that shed often. I don't like seeing dirt pile up. The hair could belong to any of the workers. That's normal." Jack watched her face. Laura's expression didn't change at all. He continued, "But according to a witness, that shed is always locked after 5 p.m. The night Liam disappeared, you were in there until late. Why?" Laura paused for a moment, then smiled faintly. "I was having trouble sleeping, so I decided to organize the shed." "Is it wrong for a property owner to work late?" The answer sounded rehearsed, as if prepared. Jack opened the folder of forensic photos. "These are the stains our team found. Initial analysis shows a spatter pattern typical of biological fluid. It's hard to believe that's just cleaning fluid." Laura glanced at it, then shrugged. "I don't understand laboratory science. All I know is I used a heavy-duty cleaner. If your team interprets it differently, perhaps that's a chemical reaction." A junior detective sitting next to Jack couldn't hold back. We're talking about a missing child. Your stepson. Shouldn't you be the one who's most worried?" Laura turned, her smile thin, but stiff. "I am worried. But not everyone shows grief the same way. My choosing to be calm doesn't mean I don't care." Jack signaled for his colleague to be quiet. He looked at Laura more closely. "Let's talk about your relationship with Liam. Many witnesses say you didn't get along. Liam wanted to study overseas, you refused. There was an argument the night before he disappeared. Correct? This time, there was a longer pause. Laura's hands gripped the edge of her shirt. Though she tried to keep her face calm, Liam was a stubborn boy. He demanded something I felt was excessive. I just wanted him to focus on his studies here. It wasn't a major fight. I just reprimanded him. Jack caught that small detail. The uncontrolled hand movement, the pause that was too long. He knew the shield she held so firmly was starting to crack. He changed his approach. His voice softened. Raising a teenager is difficult, especially when they are not your biological child. But honestly, many people saw you as too controlling. Liam felt like he was living in a prison. Were you aware of that? Laura's gaze turned sharp. A flash of anger she quickly hid. That's an outsider's opinion. I only did what I thought was right. The room fell silent again. The clock ticked slowly, filling the heavy quiet. Jack leaned back, closed the folder, and decided to stop there. Without official lab results, it was useless to push Laura further. All right, Mrs. Wallace, your answers have been noted. But understand, the investigation doesn't stop here. Evidence doesn't lie. We will meet again. Laura nodded curtly. 2 female officers entered, escorting her out of the interrogation room. Her steps were slow, her face still cold. But Jack noticed her eyes were no longer as calm as before. There was an anxiety slipped in, despite her efforts to hide it. After the door closed, the junior detective who had been emotional said quietly, "Sir, that woman is truly cunning." All her answers sound rehearsed. Jack stared at the wooden table, his fingers tapping slowly. True. She's good at controlling herself. But no lie can last forever. We'll wait for the lab results. That will be the hammer that breaks her shield. The night grew late. Jack left the interrogation room, with his mind full of strategy. He didn't look up at the sky like the previous nights. His steps went straight to the investigator's room. There, the large whiteboard full of photos and notes waited. He looked at Liam's face, pinned in the center, and whispered to himself, "Hold on, son. The truth will be revealed soon." 2 days after the search, a thick, sealed envelope arrived on DSS Jack Preston's desk. The outside read, "Forensic Laboratory Examination Results." Jack opened it carefully. He studied each page. The evidence they had gathered now spoke clearly. The stain on the shed wall tested positive for human blood, with a DNA profile identical to Liam Scott's. The hair found trapped in the drain was also a match to Liam's hair sample, taken from a comb in his room. All points led to one conclusion: Liam never left the house. He was harmed there. Jack closed the file, taking a deep breath. He knew this was the final weapon to breach Laura's defenses. That afternoon, the investigative team gathered in front of the whiteboard. Jack pinned up the evidence photos and the summary of the lab results. "Colleagues, here is our answer. Tonight, we reinterrogate Laura. This time, there is no room for her to lie." Every head nodded. Their faces were tense. As night fell, Laura was again seated in the interrogation chair. She tried to appear calm, though her eyes were puffy from lack of sleep. Jack wasted no time. He opened the lab report folder and pushed it towards Laura. "Mrs. Wallace, the stains in the shed weren't detergent. It's human blood. The DNA matches Liam. The hair in the drain is also Liam's. Please explain." Laura stared at the document for a long time, then smiled faintly. "Lab results can be wrong. Samples can be contaminated. I have the right to request a retest. Jack leaned forward, his voice low but piercing. This isn't just any test. The criminalistics lab doesn't contaminate samples. This result is final, and you know exactly what it means. Liam didn't just disappear. He was injured inside your property. Laura sighed, trying to find an opening. Even if there was blood, maybe he had a small cut. The boy was often clumsy. Hair could have just fallen out. When he was playing near the shed. Jack stared at her. If it was a small cut, why was the spatter up on the ceiling? That pattern only happens with significant force, not a simple scrape. And the hair found wasn't just one strand, it was clumped with tissue, jammed in the machine's filter. Do you call that a coincidence too? The room was silent. Laura moved her lips, but the words got stuck. For the first time, her face was no longer confident. Jack softened slightly. His voice changed. Mrs. Wallace, I don't need a story. Confessing won't bring Liam back, but it will provide justice for him, for his family, and for your own conscience. Laura looked down, then looked up again, her voice hoarse. I can't speak without my solicitor. I want Mr. Harrison here. Jack nodded slowly. Fine. You are entitled to counsel. But remember, this evidence cannot be erased by anyone. The interrogation was ended for the night. Laura still hadn't confessed. But her wall of defense was clearly cracking. Her gaze always darted away when Liam's photo was shown. Her lips trembled every time Jack said the word blood. As Laura was led out, Jack didn't sit and ponder. He immediately gathered his team. Tomorrow, we press her again. Her defense is crumbling. Just one final push and it will all collapse. The investigators nodded. They knew the time for confession was near. The night grew late. Jack sat alone in his office, looking at Liam's face pinned to the board. The teenager was now just a photo, but his voice seemed to echo from his phone's last message. Find the answers in this house. Jack clenched his fist. It's okay, son. We've found your trail, and soon the truth will be revealed. The next morning, the interrogation room was prepared again. The forensic photos were still displayed on the board. Added to them were detailed notes about the blood spatter patterns. The empty chair opposite the table waited. DSS Jack Preston sat calmly. His sharp eyes watched the door. He knew today could be the turning point. Just after 9 a.m., the door opened. 2 officers escorted Laura in. Her steps were heavy. Her hair was messy. Her face was pale with dark circles under her eyes. She sat down slowly, clasping her fingers in her lap as if seeking an anchor. Jack didn't open with a loud voice. He chose silence. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Only the sound of the wall clock. The quiet was oppressive, like a physical weight. Only then did he speak softly. Mrs. Wallace. All possibilities are closed. The DNA, the blood, the hair, the spatter patterns. They all bind to one fact. There is only one question left. What really happened that night? Laura looked down, her fingers tracing the table. She was silent for a long time, then her voice broke. I never intended to kill him. The room went still. The detectives glanced at each other, but waited. Jack leaned forward slightly, giving Laura space to feel heard. Tell me. Laura took a long, shuddering breath. We argued that night. He said he wanted to study overseas. I was furious. I felt he was just looking for an excuse to leave the house. To leave me. He said he'd rather live on the street than live with me. Laura's eyes filled with tears. I felt erased. Compared to his mother, who's gone. I lost control. I slapped him. He fell. His head hit the corner of the table. There was blood. I panicked. I thought he'd just fainted, but he didn't wake up. Laura's tears fell onto the table. Her voice trembled. I was terrified. So scared. If people found out, I would lose everything. The house, the business, my reputation. I just wanted to survive. Jack paused, letting the sobs subside. Then he spoke, his voice gentle but firm. Mrs. Wallace, panic is understandable. What isn't understandable is why you cleaned the shed, erased the stains, hid the trail. That wasn't panic. That was a conscious decision. Why did you choose that path? Laura stared blankly at the wall. Her voice was a whisper. Because I knew, as soon as Liam turned 18, everything would go to him. I would have nothing. And when he said he hated me, I felt my life was over. I just wanted to hold on to what I had. The detectives wrote quickly. Although not the full story, this confession was crucial. Laura admitted to the fight, the slap, and the fear of losing the inheritance. Jack pressed deeper. Survival doesn't mean destroying someone else's life. Liam was a child you were supposed to protect. You can't cut the truth in half. Sooner or later, it all comes out. Laura's covered her face with her hands. Her crying was silent now. Only her shoulders moved. She didn't answer. The interrogation lasted nearly 2 hours. Every time Jack mentioned the shed or the grinder, Laura refused to speak further. She only whispered she couldn't bear to remember it. But that reaction only strengthened the team's belief that the darkest detail was still hidden. Finally, Jack closed the folder slowly. He turned to his team, speaking instructively. Tomorrow, we bring in the witness. The station hand. Let Laura hear the voice of the person who saw it with his own eyes. Her defense is broken. One more push, and she won't be able to hold back. Laura was led out of the room without looking back. The detectives looked at Jack with new energy. They knew the truth was just one step away. That night, Jack stood in front of the big board in the team room. Liam's face was in the center, surrounded by photos, evidence, and notes. Jack looked at the photo for a long time, whispering to himself. Be patient, son. Tomorrow, this secret will break. The day finally arrived. As planned, the investigative team brought in the key witness. The former station hand, Kev Shaw. The older man sat just a few meters from Laura Wallace in the interrogation room. When Laura's eyes met Kev's, she quickly looked down. Her face was pale, her fingers twisting in her lap. DSS Jack Preston opened the interrogation with a steady voice. Mrs. Wallace, yesterday you only admitted to slapping Liam. But Mr. Shaw here saw more than that. It was almost midnight. You were in the shed. You turned on the machine, wearing a rain slicker, and you were cleaning something. How do you explain that? Laura was agitated. Her breathing was shallow. She tried to shake her head, but Jack pressed again, his tone sharp. The forensic evidence is conclusive. The witness is here. There is no other way but to tell the truth. The heavy silence filled the room. Kev Shaw looked at Laura with disappointment, like a father looking at a lost child. Laura finally closed her eyes. A hoarse voice escaped her lips. That night, after I slapped Liam, He fell. His head hit the table. I tried to wake him up, but he didn't move. His body was cold. I realized he was gone. She paused, her hands gripping the side of the chair. Her tears began to fall. I was terrified. I imagined prison. I imagined everyone pointing at me. I felt my life was over. So I dragged his body to the shed. My mind had only one thought. If there was no trace, no one could prove it. Her voice broke, her body shook. I turned on the machine in there. I tried to get rid of all the traces. After that, I hosed the floor with water and bleach. I changed the feed bags. I threw away anything that could be evidence. I thought that way, everything would just disappear. Laura bowed her head. Her tears fell heavily. I was so wrong. It was all because of the fear of losing. Fear of losing the house, the business, and my name. Every time I looked at Liam, I felt he was a threat who would push me out. That night, I lost control. Jack leaned forward. His voice was sharp but controlled. Mrs. Wallace, this wasn't just panic. You didn't just slap him. You made a plan afterward. You cleaned. You covered it up. You created a story that Liam ran away. That wasn't spontaneous. That was a conscious choice. Laura was silent for a long time. Finally, she nodded slowly. Yes. I admit it. I chose that path. And now, everything is too late. The room was silent. The detectives wrote quickly. Kevshaw looked down, his face grim. Jack sighed, then gave the signal. Everyone present knew this confession was the final piece of the long puzzle. Forensic evidence, an eyewitness, and now, a verbal confession. It was all complete. Laura stood weakly as she was led out. She no longer tried to fight or deny. Her face was resigned, her gaze empty, fixed on the floor. As if the world around her no longer mattered. Jack stood, looking at his team. Everyone, our work isn't finished. We compile the brief of evidence. We take all this to the court. Let the law deliver the verdict. The important thing is, the truth is out. The detectives nodded. Though their hearts were heavy hearing the confession, they knew justice now had a solid foundation. That night, Jack returned to his office. He looked at Liam's face on the board. He whispered to himself, "It's okay, son. The truth has come to the surface." Several months after the full confession, Laura Wallace's case finally went to trial. The New South Wales Supreme Court, sitting in Armidale, was packed with community members, journalists, and the victims' relatives. All wanted to hear the end of the dark story that had haunted the New England region for months. Laura was brought in, wearing prison greens. Her face was a world away from the elegant woman once known as the mistress of the large homestead. Now she looked exhausted, her eyes empty, her steps heavy. No smile, no tears, just silence, as if accepting her fate. The judge opened the proceedings with a firm voice. The Crown prosecutor laid out the long chronology, from the argument on the final night, the forensic evidence found in the shed, the testimony of the former station hand, to Laura's own confession. Everything was presented logically, irrefutably. Laura listened without much reaction. Occasionally she looked down, occasionally her eyes glistened, but she never tried to deny it again. When the judge gave her the chance to speak, she only said softly, "I am sorry. But my regret will never be enough to bring Liam back." The courtroom was silent. No cheers, no applause, just a long sigh from the people present. In the public gallery, Rob Reed and Meryl Reed sat holding hands. Their faces were streaked with tears. Not from satisfaction, but because the wound of losing their beloved grandson would never heal. But, at least, the truth was out, and their grandson had received justice. The judge then read the verdict. Laura Wallace was found guilty of murder, with aggravating circumstances of concealing the act. A sentence of life in prison was handed down. The words echoed through the room. Laura was still. Her face showed no more resistance. As if all her energy was gone. Only a fragile, resigned body remained. Outside the courthouse, journalists surrounded Rob. With a hoarse voice, he said, "We are old. All we want is one thing. We hope no other family has to go through what we went through. Don't let money make people blind." Those words touched many. Because behind this case, the community saw how fragile humans are when ruled by fear and greed. A woman who seemed gentle could turn into a cruel figure just because she didn't want to lose her wealth and status. For DSS Jack Preston and his team, this case left a huge lesson. There is no perfect crime. No matter how cleverly the perpetrator covers their tracks, the truth will always find a way out. Whether through a tiny piece of evidence, an eyewitness, or a confession finally broken by the weight of conscience. A few weeks after the verdict, the Norton homestead was sold. Rob and Meryl chose to live simply in a small house on the edge of town. They donated part of the sale proceeds to a children's charity in memory of the grandson who never got to achieve his dreams. The story of Laura and Liam became a dark warning for the Armidale community. A story of how greed and fear can lead people down unimaginable paths. After the verdict, the town of Armidale was still filled with talk about the Laura Wallace case. In local pubs, in cafes, even at the supermarket checkout. People talked about how a woman could sacrifice her stepson just for money and status. Some felt relieved that justice was served. But many also felt horrified. They realized that greed could corrupt a human heart until it was blind to family. At Liam's school, the empty chair in his classroom was left as it was. The teachers agreed not to move it. Liam's friends often placed small flowers on the desk as a sign of remembrance. In the staff room, Ms. Anna Price looked down every time she remembered the smile of her diligent student, who had been so full of dreams. Rob and Meryl began to build a new life in their small house on the edge of town. Though simple, they felt more at peace there. Every morning, Meryl watered her flowers, while Rob sat on the veranda reading the paper. Occasionally, a tear would fall when he remembered Liam, but now they were learning to accept that their grandson was at peace. DSS Jack Preston also couldn't easily forget this case. On certain nights, he would sit alone in his office, looking at the photos that had been pinned to the investigation board. There was still Liam's young, hopeful face. Jack often whispered to himself, "Son, I hope you're resting easy wherever you are. Our fight to uncover the truth wasn't just for you, but to teach everyone a lesson, so that no more families are destroyed by greed." This case made Jack appreciate his own family more. Every time he went home, he spent more time with his wife and 2 children. He realized that wealth isn't the goal of life, but rather the love and togetherness that give it true meaning. For the Armidale community, this tragedy became a reminder. Wealth can be lost, but honesty and love are the true inheritance that never fades. Parents and children need to listen to each other, to look after each other, so that no one ever feels like a stranger in their own home. That night, Jack stood in his yard, looking up at the Armidale sky, full of stars. He took a long breath. Behind the darkness of the case he had just handled, he found a glimmer of light. A life lesson that truth can be delayed, but it can never be hidden forever. The days passed, but the trace of Liam's story still lingered in many hearts. In every corner of the town, the story became a subject of reflection. Many felt chastened. They realized that a home should be the safest place for a child, not a space filled with pressure and fear. In the communities around the district, people often gathered in the evenings. Their talk was no longer just about the price of wool or the drought, but also about the meaning of raising a family with love. An old farmer said quietly to his neighbor, "We can be poor in pocket, mate, but we must never be poor in heart." That simple sentence made many fall silent. Rob and Meryl remained respected figures in their community. Despite their great loss, they didn't hold a grudge. Instead, they chose to share with children in need at the local charity. This act impressed many. From their sadness, sincerity was born; from their wounds, kindness grew. DSS Jack Preston also continued his work. But in every new case he handled, he always remembered the message from Liam, that a child just needs to be heard and held. He often told his team, never underestimate the small things, because sometimes the most trivial detail is the key to the entire truth. This story eventually spread wider through the news, social media, and word of mouth. Many wrote their opinions. Some were angry, some were sad, some hoped no other family would suffer the same fate. All agreed that love is the strongest fortress in life. At Liam's school, the teachers held a special assembly. They advised the students to appreciate their parents, and to not be afraid to speak up when there were problems at home. From this, a new awareness was born, that communication within a family is a foundation that must never crack. As the afternoon sun cast its light over the town, the atmosphere grew calm. The wind carried the scent of wet earth from the paddocks after the rain. Behind the peaceful nature, there was a message left by this tragedy. That greed only brings destruction, while love and honesty are the inheritance that will last forever. Dusk closed over the Armidale sky with shades of orange and gold. From the small house on the edge of town, Rob and Meryl sat side by side on their veranda. The evening breeze blew gently, carrying the sound of crickets from the garden. Though their hearts were still wounded by the loss of their grandson, a calmness had begun to grow. They knew that the prayers they offered every night had found their way. Liam was gone, but the truth about him was not buried. In Meryl's lap was an old photo album. Her aged fingers traced a picture of a young Liam, smiling innocently. She remembered the times when her grandson would run around the yard, laughing happily while flying a homemade kite. Tears fell again. But this time, not just from grief. There was gratitude that her grandson had left a mark of love on so many hearts. Rob gently patted his wife's shoulder. He said softly, "We can't hug Liam in this world anymore, love. But our love for him will never disappear." Meryl nodded. They both promised to keep that memory alive by sharing kindness with others. At the school, Liam's friends held a small event to remember him. In front of the classroom, a board was put up with the words "Liam Scott, a friend full of dreams." All the students wrote prayers and hopes on colorful paper, and stuck them to the board. Some wrote, "Rest in peace." Others wrote, "May your dreams inspire us." The teachers also shed tears, but also felt proud because Liam had taught a valuable lesson, even in his short life. DSS Jack Preston returned home late after closing the case file. He stood for a long time in his yard, looking at the starry sky. In his heart, he spoke as if to Liam, "Son, your case made us all learn. Learn that no crime can be hidden forever. Learn that greed only brings disaster. And most importantly, learn that family is the greatest treasure that can never be replaced by anything." This story teaches all of us that love and honesty are more valuable than any amount of money. A magnificent house means nothing if it's empty of sincerity. Wealth is useless if the heart is ruled by fear and envy. Conversely, a simple home can be a paradise if it is filled with love. Many Armidale residents began to care more for their families after this tragedy. A father at the local pub chose to go home earlier each night to have dinner with his wife and kids. A mother promised to listen more to her teenage daughter's worries. These small changes were the fruit of the suffering that Rob's family endured, a reminder so that a similar tragedy is not repeated. Rob and Meryl now often receive visitors. University students came to write papers on Liam's case. Teachers brought their students to visit, to learn firsthand about the meaning of sincerity. Though their hearts were still fragile, the old couple did not refuse. They believed that the bitter story that befell their family could be a valuable lesson for others. Laura Wallace herself now lives out her long days behind bars. In prison, she can no longer hide behind a fake smile or power. Her face is tired, her hair matted, and her gaze is empty. Regret came too late, but that is the price she must pay for the decision she once made. The wealth she fought to protect with such cruelty was finally gone, and all that remained was an endless loneliness. From a distance, the community can only remember her as a dark example of how greed can destroy everything. Not to be scorned, but to serve as a warning. Friends, life is indeed full of trials. Sometimes we are tested with scarcity, sometimes with abundance. The hardest test is when we are faced with a choice between love and greed. Laura chose the wrong path and finally drowned in regret. While Liam, though his life was short, left an eternal message. The message is simple yet profound. That love must not be defeated by wealth. That family must be protected with a sincere heart. That communication and small acts of attention can save someone's future. Let us all learn from this story. If we have children or grandchildren, take the time to listen to them. If there are problems in the family, face them with patience and wisdom. Don't let a moment of emotion destroy what we have built over years. Wealth can disappear, but beautiful memories with family will live forever. Power can crumble, but love will be remembered until the end of our days. Friends, if this story meant something to you, please leave a comment below. Share your thoughts on what touched your heart most from this journey. Don't forget to press the like button and subscribe to this channel.